It was a dark and stormy night, nor'easter rolling in. It's a long 12 hours, the power's out again. I pray for inner strength and that we don't lose no lives. Just another day in the first responders' eyes. Half a cup of coffee's gone, the first run comes in. A car slid off the road, there's a family trapped within. My heart beats like a hammer, I can barely catch my breath. I'm thinking the worst and hoping for the best. Yeah, we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. It's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this burden when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone. Now my shift is finally over, I gotta deal with what's mine and try to find a way to leave those tragedies behind. So I hug my 2 children, I kiss on my wife. Just another day in the first responder's life. Yeah, we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. It's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this burden when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone. Flashing lights fill the air, broken bodies everywhere. Another bad dream is stealing my sleep. 'Cause we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. And it's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this hurting when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone, it keeps going on. When those sirens are gone.
Welcome to the award-winning Mad Radio Show with John and Sam. Man, that is such an impactful song. Man, I get chills every time I hear it. It resonates with all of us throughout the law enforcement community, through our first responder community. Man, he really hit on every aspect of what we feel every single day. Welcome, Sam. How are you?
Hey, doing great. Yeah, chills myself, my friend, as usual. I mean, that song just hits so close to home, and I'm so excited about this show. You and I and Badge of Honor, our workshop with Jeff and John Edmondson from Healing Springs Ranch. We always talk about the importance of, staying connected to the hobbies, things that you love to do. I went out with Steve today. We had a little pew group therapy.
There you go.
So, got some new firearms, and I know that he's probably not listening. He's probably working or with his family, but Bill O'Rourke, he was my Secret Service firearms instructor. So serious bad man.
Wow.
I mean, you don't want to get on his bad side. He was so gracious. We have a retired association. They had put out, hey, we've got a couple of 357 slides, and I didn't get mine in fast enough. And in the mail arrives a package. And Steve's got this big smile on my face, and he's like, here. I was like, what is this? I'm like, it's not from Amazon, doesn't have the markings on it. And I open it up, and Bill has some serious skills besides shooting. It is a 357 slide barrel, and he engraved it. I got the Secret Service star on it. It says U.S. Secret Service on one side, my name on the other.
Wow.
And Tritotron night sights, he switched out the sights, and we took that puppy out. I mean, I'm going to say I did not fire, but 12 rounds through it, because it's priceless for me.
It's priceless.
True collectors.
It's dirty.
I mean, it's irreplaceable. Not that anything's going to happen to a SIG anyway. Right. But they're moving away from the SIG platform, surprisingly. And we had fun today.
Awesome. Awesome.
And we talk about the importance of that. And John, you need to do more of that.
Yeah,
wind therapy.
First off, I want to welcome all our law enforcement, our first responders from around the country that are tuning in right now. Thank you for listening. It's a very important show. It's something that us as first responders really sometimes frightened to talk about. And, this show takes away the fear a little bit. I've been feeling it a lot, especially during the holidays. I'm in that hypervigilant state, and I can't get out of it. I've been in this hypervigilant state for probably 20 years, and I really don't know how to change that mindset. But I'm working on it. And through a lot of our networking and through a lot of our connections, Sam, through our next guest, who's really had a major impact on me, and John Edmondson and a few other people that we were really open and talked about, it's helped. It's really helped. I still have healing to do. I still have a long way to go, but every day gets a little bit easier. Not a lot easier, but a little bit easier. And it helps. So that's why I'm glad that we're getting a lot of people to tune into the show, because it really is about healing our heroes and making an impression and really living the life that we should be able to live, and go out and do the firearms therapy and wind therapy. It all makes a difference.
It certainly does. And exciting as well, 2 ways to tune into the show. So hello, Facebook family, if you're tuning in on Facebook. But we also are streaming live on our YouTube channel, which is Mad Radio Texas. So there's a couple of people on. If you want to jump on to the YouTube, you can watch us there. John is monitoring Facebook, so if you want to ask questions, he's got the ability to chat with you there. I've got the ability to chat with you on this side, so submit your questions.
We just got Tom Barry from Blue Alert just logged on. He's down in Florida. Tom, on behalf of Mad Radio, we wish you the best. We know you went through some surgery. We hope you're healing and you're feeling better. God bless you, and hopefully we can get together soon after this COVID.
Absolutely.
So are we ready for our guest? Or do you got more to talk about?
Well, let's just, let's intro a little bit more. So you and You and I first met our guests through Our Watch. Well, actually, I first met Dr. T at a Lima meeting. Remember last week, everybody,
Right.
we had Todd Geary. So he runs the Law Enforcement Mental Health Alliance for the Dallas area. So Dr. T and Our Watch were presenting what they do, and I was like, zoom, I was glued. It was awesome information. And introduced myself, and we went out to the ranch. John, we were both impacted. You were impacted tremendously.
Still.
Yeah, and so Dr. T also up in Frisco, she has an amazing practice that is 100% dedicated to first responders, and we are going to talk about that. And so, yeah, let's welcome Dr. T on the show here.
Yeah, let's bring her in. Hold on. Let me figure out how to do this. It's all new stuff to me.
Technology.
There we go. Welcome, Dr. T.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see the both of you.
Welcome. Well, thanks for being on with us. I just introed you a little bit, told the viewers, because I can say viewers, not just listeners, because everybody can see us. How we met the first time you and I met, and then how we broadened everything with Our Watch, and really what you're doing now, dedicated your entire practice to first responders, healing their traumas. Basically, I mean, if you watch the intro to the show, everything that is in that video is what you deal with.
That music video right before I come on, right? I've never seen that before. It's awesome.
It's incredible. And so, yeah, tell everybody about your background and why you have the passion for first responders.
So on a professional side, so my doctorate's in forensic psychology, and I really was just open to wherever that was going to take me. So in grad school, I was in hospitals. I worked at a women's prison. I worked with neuro rehab. So some of that included first responders who were injured on the job. But my postdoc is really what geared me toward first responder psychology. So my postdoc was with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. And they had about 11 law enforcement psychologists that were just embedded. We were a part of the department. And so it wasn't this thing that you went to, when you were at rock bottom. It was something that was at day one of the academy. And so that we could get the skills training out there. Because John, just like you talk about, there's a lot of good training for getting the first responder ready for the call. There's just not a lot of good training for what happens afterwards. And so one thing I really appreciated about LA Sheriffs is taking that approach to just have us really embedded in the culture. So with them, I did individual therapy, couples, families, groups, a lot of critical incident debriefs, trainings. I was part of helping with their peer support program. And I remember having a conversation with one of the other psychologists of just saying, this is so great, but what about all the smaller departments across the nation who can't afford to have 11 first responder psychologists at their fingertips? On a personal side, what really drives my passion is I come from a family of law enforcement, so my dad and my brother. And so I just am deeply passionate about something has to be different for our first responders. For my dad, he was a police officer for, I think it was 32 years. He's retired now. And we always talk about back then, and I hear that all the time in my office, wow, I wish I would have known this 20 years ago. And the thing that's so frustrating is, maybe back then we didn't truly understand the impact of repeated trauma and stress exposure, but now we do. And it's still being done the same way as it was back then. And so my whole mission, so moving to Texas from California, my whole mission was, I really want to hit the departments that don't have access to resources, start building those relationships locally for both fire and PD, so that we can make skills training and wellness just a part of their culture. And so that's really how first got developed. Stands for First Responder Stress and Trauma, and I do all of the same things that I did for the sheriff. So a lot of therapy, but also building those relationships for trainings, trying to get into the academy. my opinion is we need to not only have us in the academy, but bringing family members in. Like, they have to understand that this job is going to change their loved ones' brains and bodies. It's just going to, right? And that's going to show up off duty. And so if they can understand that and be prepared for it, now we have skills training, right? They feel prepared the same way they feel prepared going into the call. And now we don't see maybe as many suicides. We don't see as many marriages ending because of it. People will still have their livers at the end of their career.
That's the old joke. That's the old joke on the on any PD is like, if you still have a good liver and you're only on your first marriage, you did something wrong, because in law enforcement, the NYPD, I know with back then, 50-60% of us were divorced within the first 5 years of being on the job.
Yeah.
But getting to your point, and we brought this up with Todd last week, is what we're finding is the decompress. We spoke to Chris Fields about this as well. I think building relationships with the small departments is fantastic. The only problem is decompression time, and a lot of the officers who want to be helped, who experience that bad call, right? They'll come in and they'll turn around and they'll say, that baby I just did CPR and it's weighing heavy on my head, right? Yeah, we'll talk about it later. There's a robbery in progress. We spoke to Chris Fields 2 weeks ago, and he was one of the first on the scene of the Oklahoma City bombing. Now, his fire company spent over 15 hours digging people out of the rubble. They were told to go back to their firehouse, get some sleep, and they get back there at 11, and at 1 o'clock they're banging in with a house fire and another rescue. So that now that the traumas are all building up.
Yep.
And we discussed this with Todd as well, and that seems to be an issue. There is no time for mental health to fit in. Right.
And I mean, my personal opinion is it needs to be mandatory as a part of the job, like and over until there's some form of decompression, whether you're jumping on the treadmill, whether you are talking about it in a group. There has to be something like that's when the shift is done, because if not, you hijack the nervous system and then you send them home, and then it's starting to crash, and that's when they're around the people who matter the most to them. And that can not look real pretty, when a physiological, the system is physiologically recovering from being hijacked in the fight or flight. It can look like depression. It can look like detachment. It looks like maybe you're zoned out. You're on your fourth beer. It's like they don't really care, but it's not really a choice, right? It's a physiological thing that's happening to them. So much of what I try and do in therapy. And John, you had just mentioned some of that unknown of that scary part of reaching out for therapy, is if we can shift the mindset to all therapy is it's just more skills training. You have to be skilled in how to regulate the nervous system. And so much of what we do in here is limbic system training, which I can talk to you guys about in a moment. I'll make it like short and sweet so we don't get into all the brain stuff. It's really important for the first responder to understand what that is. And I think triggers is a huge part of something I'd love to also talk about tonight, because just like you guys were talking about, the holidays for first responders aren't like the holidays for everybody else, right? For the non-first responder, holidays can mean, time off, spending time with family, feeling all holly and jolly, like that's great. But for the first responder, it can mean family gatherings gone wrong. It can mean alcohol. It can mean deadly crashes. It can mean people not paying attention, watching their kids, cooking gone wrong with house fires. And so there's a lot of triggers around the holidays. And a lot of my clients right now are working on that. They're trying to get ahead of it, which is one of the crucial skills, is you have to understand first what's happening, and then you have to anticipate, okay, this is probably a situation where I'm going to actually get triggered. So now we have a game plan, especially if you are in a relationship or surrounded by loved ones, talking about what might potentially trigger you in the situation, so that you can say, okay, so when that happens, this is what I need to do. This is what I need from you, because the triggers are going to happen. You don't get to choose that. It's the same way I tell my clients, like when you're off duty and your system's acting up, not because you're weak, it's not because you're going crazy, it's not because you're losing your mind, it's because you condition your system so well on duty that this is just the aftermath of it. Your body actually thinks it's taking care of you, it's protecting you. So if you can think of it in a way like, hey, fantastic, your nervous system's working, like that's great. That indication is you're good at your job, but what makes you really good at your job can make you really not so great at home with your relationships, with your self-care, with your awareness. So those conversations have to be had with.
Yeah, I'm already getting comments, Dr. T, as you're talking about the holidays being horrible. It's not happy times.
Right. So before we dive into like what actually can we do, because I always want people, especially for your listeners and your viewers, to feel like they're walking away with something that they can actually start implementing immediately, right? What I've noticed is first responders are just craving skills because the departments have failed them on that front end. It's kind of like backwards. Departments are good about what happens afterwards, like whether they have EAP or whether they bring in someone to do a debrief or they send them to someone like myself. But if we got ahead of that, right, we have to talk about what should we be doing to manage that so we decrease the likelihood of them ending up in my office. That's where we fail them. So I tell my clients, like, if your department has failed you in the front end of it, you have to start creating that for yourself, or else you will not survive this career, either physically or it will kill everything that's important to you.
But with that, okay, now your first steps. Let's talk about getting in front of that real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a phenomenal idea. You know, when you get into the academy and you start doing it. But let's be real. Let's look realistically. When an officer gets out of the academy, a lot of that stuff, except the physical training or the hand-to-hand combat or the shooting, a lot of that stuff gets thrown out. You forget about it. And when you talk about, we used to call them hair bags. That's what the old timers were. You know, when you got to a precinct, they were called hair bags, and they were the burnt out cops, wrinkled shirts, disheveled, not caring.
Yeah.
Hey kid, let me show you how it's done. That's when it's like going to a job and you get hooked up with the bad apple. You get taught the wrong things. You're groomed the wrong way.
Yes.
And from the very beginning, if you're groomed that way, those are the traits that are going to stick with you throughout your career. So we have to eliminate those.
And can I tell you the statement that needs to be eliminated like immediately? Because it makes me want to pull my hair out when I hear it. Is people who still say, command staff, who still say, if you can't handle the job, then maybe the job's not right for you. Okay, listen. No one can handle repeated trauma and threat exposure. No one can. If you have a nervous system, which you do, you cannot handle that. There's far too much research to show your system's going to get hijacked, and then it's going to make associations. Okay, so here's a little bit of that brain part. Okay, so in your limbic system, there is something called the amygdala. Okay, it's kind of like a little almond shaped in there. And its primary job is to make associations with what is in your environment and then pair that with an emotional response. Is this something that is safe? Is this something that is secure? Is this something that's a threat? So if you think about on the job, your amygdala is taking in everything can potentially become a trigger, right?
Everything's a threat.
Everything's a threat. And so then you go home and your amygdala, it's still scanning the environment. And so now there's something that is familiar because the amygdala, it can overgeneralize all the time. Now there's something that feels familiar. And it could even be like your kids running around being loud, right? And it's just chaotic. And the
Dogs barking.
Dog barking for John. Yeah.
And so the brain is taking that in, and all of a sudden the amygdala is deciding, oh, wait a minute, like we've been here before. That's all a trigger is. It's just your brain saying, wait a minute, this is familiar to me. And last time we were here, we weren't safe, we were helpless, we were in trouble. So it's going to release that response to keep you safe. Well, you don't need to be safe when your kids and your dogs are all chaotic. But unfortunately, or fortunately, because we want to keep ourselves safe, that response is going to happen before the prefrontal turns on and says, oh, wait a minute, it's just my kids or it's just my dog. You're having a physiological response. And that's why we talk about training the limbic system. Once that thing's activated, it's really hard to talk yourself out of it, right? Some of what we do in therapy is cognitive therapy, meaning we're paying attention to your inner dialogue. But because the first responders' job is so much about having the limbic system just hijacked, you are constantly kind of seesawing between the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight, and then the parasympathetic, which is kind of like that calm place. A healthy human is somewhere in the middle. We're alert, but we're calm. The first responder just kind of seesaws between, we're either in panic mode, like we're about to die, or we're in just complete depletion mode, right? And so it's absolutely exhausting, but the response is not a choice. The response is because you conditioned your system to do that. You have to thank your system. I always tell my clients, I'm like, in that moment, if you can think, hey, thanks, body, brain, I appreciate what you're doing right now, but I don't really need you right now, right? Because you can change the brain. You can make new associations for your amygdala. But I'll tell you what, if you start avoiding everything in your life, or you just start dodging it and say, well, that makes me uncomfortable, I won't do that, and now your life is this big, the brain has no opportunity to make a new association of, oh, hey, I was uncomfortable, but I'm safe.
Yeah, how about the drinking part? Because when all that stuff, you feel so on edge. It's like, oh yeah, let's have another one. And then to quiet not only the feelings, but the stupid head talk, right? So we just completely numb out, and then we don't have to pay attention to anything, including our families who suffer.
Right.
Yeah.
And so instead, what the limbic system needs is the two best ways to calm the limbic system. When the sympathetic turns on, it's just your amygdala taking that in. The two best ways is how you breathe and then movement, okay? When you move your body forward, whether you're walking, whether you're running, whether you're on a bike, when you move your body forward, the eyes move in a certain way that it decreases the fear response and it releases dopamine. So that's why I tell first responders, it is okay to remove yourself from a situation 18 times if you have to. You have to communicate it with your family members, because if they don't understand and you're saying, whoa, I need to step out. I'm getting to this point. I don't want to say something I don't mean. I'm getting on edge. And the loved one is like, oh, you're going to stay here right now. We're going to talk about this now. Or you're not leaving. We're at my family's event. You can't just step out. You have to have that communication, because removing yourself, calming the system down, going back, if you get jacked up again, remove yourself again. You're kind of training the limbic system to learn, okay, we're safe here. We're unhinging that connection, that association, and we're making a new association. So I tell first responders, I am perfectly okay with you removing yourself from a situation, but you better be doing something with it. Moving forward, and then how you breathe. Do not remove yourself to go down 4 beers. No, that is not what we're doing, right? Remove yourself, move forward, and it has to be paired with movement for the brain to get out of fear response. So people who say, oh, I just need to go for like a drive to clear my head, not nearly as effective of just go for a walk instead.
You hit something that really holds true to my heart, and I've been talking this over with my wife for probably the last couple of weeks. When you talk about triggers, and something that's really never triggered me, and I'm just starting to learn it, is that I got 5 dogs, right? And they're all the best. They are the best dogs in the world. They just want love. They're all rescues. I walk in the house, they go nuts. They're barking, they're jumping around, they're fighting for attention. Like when you say exhausting, it is extremely exhausting to hold my temper down.
Oh, did we lose John?
Like I said, I shouldn't get mad. Lose people. Oh, there we go. We're back.
Yeah.
There's no reason for me to be angry. There's no reason for me to be angry. There's no reason. But when you talk about that trigger that in the limbic system that triggers, it takes every ounce of energy in me not to hurt the dogs. And I just told my wife this. It's scary. It's scary because they go nuts. And, I don't want to hurt my dogs. I don't want to kick my dogs. And I never, would. So it takes so much strength and energy that I'm physically exhausted 5 minutes after I walk in the house.
And I'm just the opposite.
What do you think your amygdala takes in when the dogs are doing that? Like, how do you think your amygdala is interpreting that? Because remember, it overgeneralizes. So what do you think the interpretation is there?
Chaos.
Chaos. And what is chaos in your past experiences? What does chaos mean?
Drug raids, doing drug raids where they've had dogs released at us. Domestic violence where you have the whole family in a kitchen screaming, yelling, things get so. I'm learning to say, hey, this brings me back to this. This brings me back to this.
Well, because if I can just say one thing that you said, and I just want to catch it so that you can, awareness is huge, right? We have to be aware of ourselves. One of the things that you just said is I have no reason to be angry. As soon as there's that thought process, there can be some guilt associated with the feeling, and then you kind of just feel bad. Instead, I would much rather have you step away and say, I wonder what about that made me angry. Because then when you can actually think through it, then you can put words to it. And then, my goodness, I hope you can share it with a loved one saying, you know what I think happened there? I think it's this. Because research shows that when we talk about what upsets us, we are less upset. Because we're starting to use our prefrontal instead of having just this limbic response. But also know that the amygdala, it's trying to keep us safe. It's taking in all the information, kind of using it as a compass. And remember, our life is experienced through our 5 senses. So it could be a smell that triggers the system. It could be the sound of something. It could be the taste of something. I've had guys who get a cut and they suck on it, on their finger. The taste of blood in their mouth can have a response. And so you have to think outside the box of, I wonder what my body just took in, of why it got activated. Because then I can understand next time when it's happening, I feel in control because I know why I'm having this response rather than what the hell's wrong with me? I don't have any reason to feel this way or I'm out of control. And I want to just on the dog comment for a second, because the amygdala is taking in all that information, it's trying to flag what it needs to keep you safe. You could have 100 really good experiences with a dog. Dogs are fluffy, they're happy, they make you feel good. And it takes one incident of a dog snapping at your face. The amygdala takes that in. So then the next time you're around a dog, it's not remembering the 100 times it felt good. It's remembering the one time it felt threatening, right? And so if I can real quick, just to share a funny story, not that someone getting triggered is ever funny, but my dad gave me permission to share. So my dad was on the SWAT team, right, when he was a police officer. And they had a barricaded situation. Somebody, possibly had a gun. And it was him and the team, and they had the handler there with the dog. And so they decided, they gave him enough opportunities. They're going to kick down the door, and they're going to come into the room. So they kick down the door. They release the dog. And the subject's sitting there under the sheets. Well, then he pulls out a gun and puts it to his head. So my dad yells, stop, no, to the team to start backing up back out of the room. And the handler, I guess, yelled something in German for the dog to come back. And the dog, when it turned, saw my dad's hand against the handler. And this German shepherd attached to my father's left upper thigh. And so my dad's sitting there with a German shepherd, and he's backing up with this dog hanging there, okay? So fast forward 20 years, and my dad's coming over to meet the in-laws, and they've got 4 standard poodles. So what do you think is going to happen for my dad walking into that environment? It doesn't have to be a German shepherd. This is where the brain overgeneralizes. 4 standard poodles, brain immediately goes to a place of, those are 4 potential threats.
Right.
Anxiety's up, right? And now he's having a hard time staying present and enjoying the barbecue because he's so concerned of what these 4 threats are going to do. And that's what happens over and over for first responders is once that thing's activated and you're not quite sure why, now you can't enjoy yourself. Now you can't be present with your family members.
Kind of ruins the whole day.
It
takes a long time to get out of it.
Yes.
But
and realizing that, it took a long time for me to work on the awareness piece. And because I'd have people all the time, I'd be talking to them, I'd be right there with them, and they'll be like, hello, where'd you go?
Yeah.
I could not be present for whatever reason at a drop of a hat. And it has taken me so many years to get that back where now I am aware. I guess I've had enough people tell me, hello, Sam, you're not there. To really, when I'm with somebody, like to make sure I'm with somebody. And I kind of likened it because I've been, separated for law enforcement for so long. I kind of put it to the side, like, whatever, I don't need to be aware, but I really did. Not only so I stopped hurting the feelings of the people that I was around, but really, it's something that, I don't know, maybe it's 2020, this year. It's like, no, Sam, you really need to be aware because unfortunately we're living in a time where, you don't know when some crazy guy is going to come after you in a store because you don't have your mask on, that kind of thing. But
well, Sam,
yeah.
do you always carry your gun? I can't. Do you always carry your gun?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's yeah.
You do, right?
I'll pretty much all the time, all the time. And I've actually had to train myself down to realize that, if it's the law enforcement doesn't get put aside, all that training doesn't get put aside, John, that we've been through, that we've trained. So we go home every night,
Right.
So in these situations where I go over my head, well, gosh, if somebody did come at me, like I'm watching this YouTube stupid idiot on the video, he's not going to end up having a really good day,
Right.
But I have to realize that I'm Sam, the citizen, and being in Texas, it affords us rights with concealed carry and everything. But the way I use my voice, my presence, I can turn that on in a drop of a hat. Good for that kind of situation. Not good when I'm talking to my kid.
But do you feel comfortable? Like he and Dr. T, this is a lot. It's got to do with you because you when we did our watch, this really kind of opened up a lot of doors. Yeah. Sam, when you go out with and you take your gun all the time, right? If you don't take your gun, do you feel comfortable?
Oh, it depends where we're going. There's not many places I go where if they say no guns, I'm like, I guess I'm not going there. But,
right.
It really, at this point in my life, it depends. Like, I don't need my gun to go on a boat.
Oh, no. But if you don't, right. But you feel safe if you're going out. But if you're going to go to the mall or if you're going to go out to eat or if you're going to go.
No, it's on me.
It's on you, right?
It's not even a question in my mind. It's just, yeah.
Because you don't feel comfortable without it.
It's not that I don't feel safe.
It's the what if.
This goes back to dealing a lot with survivor's guilt. And we talked about that in our workshop with Todd and John Salerno that if there was a situation that occurred and I have all the skill and ability to address it, and I wasn't prepared to do so, and somebody got hurt, that would be really bad.
It's the what if mentality. What if something happens while I'm out?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I being an educator, teaching this stuff, I'm very different when I'm with my son. So, if I'm armed, or when I'm armed, let's say we're in a grocery store, I have my son with me who towers over me. So I'm the little pipsqueak in the situation. If something happened where somebody needed to address a threat, I've already trained myself in my mind. It's not me. I'm getting my kid out of there. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, of course, it's safe for your kid.
So in situation, I think it's just all, it's all the years of, John, you don't go in places without your gun.
Right. And I'm saying that.
It's like, we're getting dressed. The gun.
Right, but this is what Dr. T is trying to say.
Yeah.
Look at the training and everything that we've been through. Okay. It's not normal. It really isn't normal that I have to go to dinner and I have to have my gun on me to feel comfortable. That's not how life is supposed to be. I should be able to feel comfortable enough to eat dinner without having my gun on me. Outside.
Here's what I would say to that. I always say, if it's something that's impairing your life, if it's something that because of the job, it is impairing your life,
right?
That's something that we probably need to make some changes. If having your gun on you doesn't really impair anything, I would say that like you have to change it. But I would flip it to a different type of mindset. The way you guys are talking about having your gun and feeling prepared and feeling ready for what if this happens. That's the same thing when we are learning skills in therapy, is really feeling prepared for what if this happens. What if I start to feel anxious? What if I start to feel on edge? What if I start to feel like I'm going to pass out? What if I feel out of control? Having your gun, it's almost like skills training. What you learn in therapy is like having that on you so that if it does go this way, I've got a plan. I know what I'm going to do to keep myself and other people safe. Right. And so it's having that, it's trying to get rid of that vulnerability, because for the first responders, when there's a physiological response, they feel out of control. And as soon as they feel out of control, that's when then the inner dialogue goes to that place of what's wrong with me? I'm not fit. I'm going crazy. And again, it's a limbic system issue. It's a conditioning issue. And it's there because you conditioned it to be that way. But you want it that way on duty. We can make some changes off duty. We just have to be really intentional with it.
Sure. I want to get back to the clinical side because we're big proponents with a badge of honor. All our workshops, we're like, you've got to have this training in the academy before you're out there on the street, so you know how to better, like you said, condition yourself when the stress comes up. You had said in the beginning of the show about having that, and somebody commented on the YouTube, when there's a critical incident, having the debriefing is great. You need more follow-up and possibly, I don't want to call it a psych eval because that's kind of formal, but just an ability to debrief, one-on-one, call it, with somebody. I can see that being a positive, and I can see that being a big negative if you don't have the skilled practitioners and the people. I'm just going to say it. You can't use EAP for that. Okay. And departments, despite the research, despite, former us getting up there saying, stop with the EAP, you're ruining the process. You are promoting the stigma. These people never carried a gun or a hose. Maybe you'll find 1 in 1,000, maybe. And, what are your thoughts about having that one-on-one debrief after, the group debrief?
Yes.
With somebody who has gone through, specific training and, has the level of expertise that you have?
I think it is absolutely necessary, right? And so I think the group debrief is great because they feel connected. They feel like they're getting some skills, because a huge part about a group debrief is to really make sure they understand this is what your body's been through. This is likely what you'll see even in the next week, so that when it happens, don't be alarmed. These are things that can make it better. These are things that can make it worse. Make sure family members know. A lot of it's skills training, but you're not really allowing each individual to digest their process. And so for when someone comes in on a one-on-one, right, even if they say like, oh, I felt okay afterwards, this or that, when you actually slowly kind of start to open that up, the brain, you have that response, not because it's happening right in front of you, even thinking about it. The brain's going to take that in. It's not sure if it's happening right now or if it's happening back then. It's going to have a metabolic response. And so we kind of want that. We want that physiological response to happen then, because what's different on the couch versus in the call is we get to slow it down. We get to take timeouts. They get to put words to it. They get to feel their heart rate come up and take a moment to just take a few nice diaphragmatic breaths to try and control it, where on the call, you get to do that. Or they get to also put words to it. Things like, at this moment, I felt really helpless. Okay, what was that? What does helplessness feel like? And then it may take them back to, not always, but sometimes it may feel like another part of their life where they felt helpless and they couldn't change that. Right. And so you're putting words to it, you're slowing it down, but you're also giving the body a new experience with the trauma. Right now, the body's having an experience of, okay, this was traumatic, but I'm able to breathe through it. I'm able to release whatever it is I need to, whether it's through tears, whether it's through talking about it. And sometimes they don't always even need the words. Sometimes it's just sitting there, hand on their chest, hand on their stomach, and I'll probably have you guys do this just so that you know, but taking those nice deep breaths and feeling what their body feels like when it's in that tense mode, and actually learning that I can calm this moment down. So sometimes it's not always about the specific call that they were on. It's about opening it back up and giving the brain a new association with the call so that doesn't follow them and then become a trigger. Because like I said earlier, everything can become a trigger. You could have someone go on a call where, someone was hit by a car, knocked out of their shoes, and the little pair of red shoes on the tollway. And now they go home and their kid's wearing red shoes. What do you think is going to happen? Right? So if they don't put those two things together, saying, holy cow, when this happened, it looked just like my daughter. Or the way that person was, mangled inside that car, they had the same color hair as my wife. I mean, they don't get to say that on the call. When they're on the call, they don't get to slow it down and say, hey, everybody, time out. My heart rate's up. Whew, you guys feel that? They don't get to do that.
Right. Yeah, that would be a little odd. Yeah.
I got a question from a viewer. I got a question from a viewer from Donna.
Yes.
She writes, what are some of the many varied, before it gets extreme, reactions that someone can self-recognize when they are just on the early side of the threshold of their limbic system being on overload? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Okay. Hi, Donna. Thank you for sending in the question. So it doesn't always have to be like a big major flashback where the person, what happens for the flashback, it's not like an intrusive memory of what's happened, but the person actually feels like they are there again. They are out of their reality. They're hearing it. They're feeling it. It doesn't always have to look like that for it to be, okay, the system's getting reactive. It can for people who suffer from flashbacks, but a lot of times a triggered response is a little bit more subtle, right? So maybe you're a little bit on edge. Maybe you're just short with your kids. Maybe things just make you a little bit more irritable. You're a little bit more snappy. But if you go inward, right, you pay attention to the bodily sensations, heart rate usually starts coming up. You feel like a little bit, maybe some tingling in your hands. You feel like kind of your body's telling you like it wants to move. Your body naturally wants to move away from what is threatening. That's why moving forward is really important. But you'll start to feel some of that. And if you just stay put in it and you don't try to understand it, it can then get to that place where as soon as the cognitive part starts, so things like what's wrong with me, what's happening, not here, not now, don't do it right now. And then your brain's taking that in and being like, oh crap, are we not okay? And then it releases even more adrenaline and cortisol. And now we are at the place where we're either yelling or we're in complete shutdown or we're throwing things or we're slamming doors. But it can also look it's not just anger, anxiety, irritability on edge. It can also be to the other side where if the limbic system is going more towards the parasympathetic side, you can start to see some of that numbing. So maybe you start noticing that things you usually enjoy, you just don't really enjoy them anymore. We call them the ustas, right? I used to enjoy doing this. I used to take my wife out to dinner. I used to enjoy concerts. I used to, right? And so you can see some of that pullback from those activities. They start saying no to a lot of things where maybe before they were more social. They just feel really kind of down with no energy. They're having a hard time sleeping, or they're sleeping too much. Maybe their appetite changes. All of that is signs that the limbic system, your nervous system, is a little bit off, and we got to have a change of scenery. We've got to give the five senses something different. So even if it means like jumping in the shower, letting the water hit your face as you take a few nice deep breaths, and then pair it with something like, I'm good, I've got this, I'm okay, or I'm working on this, right?
Yeah.
You just said something that John Edmondson said, talking to yourself, saying, I'm good, that reinforcement, I haven't done it, But now that you did it, said it, because John was saying it through the workshop, and what was his word, Sam, that I was using
in
the workshop?
Like his mantra, what he says.
It's positive affirmation.
Yeah, just to talk to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if I could, I just want to share, especially Donna. I want to share a personal story of what you just talked about and what it could look like for somebody. John, I'm just going to call you out. You've got the throwing things and that you have that down. Okay. John has shared openly before, but I don't think I've ever shared this story. So it had been years and years and years and years since I have had any trigger. And I was at a conference away from home, and I want to just preface it by saying this is why it's important to talk to your family, to your friends, to let them know what happens with you. So sitting outside, was in San Diego enjoying lunch, and Miramar's there, San Diego, the planes are going off the ships. They're doing extra military exercises. And one of the fighter jets, we're watching it. It's so cool. One of the fighter jets went into what I call a slow burn. So they've got the, I'm so not good at describing military aviation. So excuse me.
You're doing a good job. You're really doing a good job.
Here, she's like, what the heck is Sam talking about? So like the afterburner. So it's like making a rushing, that really deep growl sound that is constant. And it just went boom. I'm seeing like a movie screen, not a full flashback. I'm not back in it, but I'm seeing this movie screen, which is transparent ahead of me. And it's the sound of the towers. And I'm watching the towers fall. And for me, my friend is talking to me and I just see her lips moving. There's nothing else. I don't hear a word she is saying. I am in that movie screen, towers fall, towers fall, towers fall. And she recognized what was going on. And all she had to do, my hand, we were sitting like, it was like big furniture. So my hands were up like this. All she had to do was come across and she touched, boom, right back. And she just said, hey, are you okay? And I said, wow, that was wild. I told her what happened. I excused myself. I went to the bathroom and you got this, Sam. That was fucked up. You got this. Came out of nowhere. You're good. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it brings up two things for me. One of the things that happened when your friend touches your arms or touched your arm is there's something called grounding. And we do it all the time because it brings us back to the moment. When your limbic system's activated, it can get, some of my clients call it like the Rolodex, where you open up one and all of a sudden your brain starts going through like the file cabinet of these things that maybe you don't usually think of on a regular basis, but all of a sudden it's there, it's real, it's happening. And again, this is the power of our thoughts. Even thinking about it, the body goes into that defense mode of wanting to protect you. So to bring you back to the moment, when we talk about life, through our five senses, activating one of those things can help. So touch, right? If you have a pen nearby, picking up a pen and just feeling it in your hands. What does it feel like? And then looking at the pen, what does the texture look like? What color is it? Focusing in on it, right? Take a nice deep breath in of what smells are around me, right? Feeling my feet on the floor, the heaviness of how my feet feel on the floor beneath me. All of those things, activating any of your senses, can help ground you back to this moment, right? So that's one of those things that I wanted to mention of what your friend did. And I just lost the second thing that I was going to say, but hopefully
Something about grounding.
Hopefully, but grounding is such an important part of bringing yourself back to the moment, because your limbic system, the trauma, it will take you there. It will absolutely take you there.
Okay, so a listener, Charles with the blue voice, he says, well, what if your family knows nothing about post-traumatic stress, and he says refuses to learn about it, understands and understand some things associated with it, so you're left fighting your demons alone. But how can we help family in this process? Because really, once you get to a therapeutic part of it, they're not really involved. And I'm the last person, after I got home from EMDR therapy, which is really intense, my husband was not going to ask me, hey, how'd your therapy go? Because I'm like, really?
Right. Absolutely.
Here's how it went.
Yeah. What I try and do, and what I always recommend, is we call them collateral sessions, meaning that you're bringing a family member or all your family members into one of the very first sessions that you're doing, not because it all of a sudden becomes family therapy, but because you're utilizing them to give them that information and to gather collateral information from them. Because your first responder may not be fully aware of him or herself, right? So to have family members say, hey, he tends to be like this when he gets home from shift, or these things tend to make him just fly off the wall, or she tends to shut down when this situation happens. So now we're gathering all of that. But again, the important piece is we're letting the family members try to understand, hey, this is what this might look like. And even just understanding that physiological component of what makes your loved one really good on their job is going to change how they are at home. Like, they are going to be a different person. Don't worry, like, they'll still love you. They're still that person, but their brain and their body are different now. Okay. And so when we see these things, yes, it's up to the first responder to, what can I do for myself in this moment to help myself? But then there also needs to be the question, okay, what do I need from my family members? So even if a family member knows nothing about the impact of trauma and nothing about what happens on shift, this is where I tell first responders, though, and I get it as a first responder family member, the last thing they want to do is come home and open up about how terrible this world can be, right? They want to protect you from the horrors that they just experienced. But I tell them it doesn't have to be details, but you need to give them something, even if it's as the bare minimum of really tough shift. Or maybe we take it a step further of really tough shift, bad car accident. Or maybe another step forward of really bad shift, car accident, kids involved. And now the spouse at home, and if you guys have kids, now the spouse is starting to say, okay, he might be a little bit on edge when he gets home. But if they know nothing else, I give them a little insight. But the only question that family members really need to learn is to ask, what do you need from me?
Right.
Instead of, what the hell's wrong with you? Or why do you act like that? Or do you treat your friends, or do you treat your peers like that at work? Would you talk to your command staff that way? I'm not one of your officers. Family members, that's where they can just put the defenses up. And now the first responder really feels like, okay, you really don't get it. And therefore, I'm not going to share it. So instead, if you know nothing about post-trauma, but your loved one's coming home and they're just kind of on edge, they're really short, they seem a little flustered, they're slamming some of the cabinets in the kitchen, just asking, saying, hey, I'm noticing this in you. What do you need from me? And then I tell my first responders, if you have someone in your life who's asking what you need, you better have a good answer. Even if you don't know the answer, even if it's just saying, I don't know what I need, but this is how I'm feeling. Okay, now we at least know. Maybe in 10, 15 minutes from now, when it comes down, you then maybe want to talk about it. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you go for a walk together. Maybe you go jump in the shower. Now we have a conversation going. It's more of a team approach. But first responders need to be also asking their family members, what do you need from me? This is where, when we talk about going into the holidays, anticipating the triggers, anticipating what might make me feel on edge, and having that conversation so that we can talk about, what do you need from me and what do I need from you to make sure this runs smoothly. Let's have a team approach to it. Right?
And how would you coach the family member on not trying to fix the first responder?
Right. Well, I would ask the family member, like, what needs to be fixed? I'd start there. And then maybe they say, well, he's an a-hole when he gets home. Okay, you always want to focus on the behavior, not the person.
Right.
So that's why the verbiage has to be, when you do this, I think you're an a-hole, rather than just, I think you're an a-hole, right? So then it can be, when you come home and you don't say hi to anyone and you just storm off to your room to go change, I feel like you don't care about me. Now we're focusing on the behavior. So I can then ask the family member, what would need to look different for you to feel cared for when the first responder gets home. And maybe the spouse's response is, I at least want to be acknowledged. Come and kiss me on the cheek. Say hi. Ask me how my day was. Then we turn it to the first responder. This is the request. This is what would make your loved one feel cared for. What's your response to that? Sometimes it's, I can do that. Now they're more aware of it. They'll be more intentional with it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the request, the first responder is like, no way I'm going to do that. Right? No way I'm going to do that. That doesn't mean that we just stand our ground. Okay, we talk about let's modify. Let's compromise. They're asking this of you. You're saying I can only give this much. So let's modify it. And that has to also happen with the holidays too. Right?
Right.
Family members have a lot of expectations of what it should look like. And so for family members listening, be careful of your shoulds. Because shoulds can become, well, we should be able to all sit down for dinner. We should be able to all take these family pictures together like everybody else on social media. All right. We should have this. We should be able to celebrate on the actual day. But we have to come back and ask, well, why can't we? Why can't we do those things? And if it's something out of your control, like simply they got mandated and I'm not going to be able to change that, okay, then what can we do different in our reality to have our should make a little bit closer to what we expected? So now the first responder family can create a new expectation together and actually put a plan in place. Like, I want it to feel this way. Well, what would make it feel like it's normal? At least us sitting down for dinner. When can you go sit down for dinner in the next week? It may not be Christmas Day, but can we have like a Christmas dinner the day before? Can we have it? And if we can't, can we say, okay, we're going to do it on New Year's Eve then? And that's when we'll have our celebration. But the first responder family has to work with that flexibility, or else they're going to end up feeling very disappointed because it didn't go the way that it should have.
But see, that brings us that point brings us back to what you said originally, where we have to educate the families prior to the job. We have to in the academy. You know, when our first responders are starting to get into this life before they actually enter this field, family members have to come in and be aware of and be on the lookout for what their spouse is going to turn into. Mm-hmm. You know, and what, you know, because we've seen it numerous times that the red flags have been raised, but nobody noticed them or nobody knew how to respond to them. So, you know, getting family members involved from the very beginning, especially if you're not accustomed to what first responder life is about, could be very educating. And I think that could save a lot of families if we introduce them to what the life is about. Because Absolutely. You put a spouse with a person who's becoming a cop or a firefighter, you know, some women may not understand that their husband has to go away for 48 hours. You know, they're going to be away from the home for 48 hours. Or, you know, a man who's never really been into law enforcement, he marries a female cop. He doesn't understand the camaraderie or the bond between her fellow, and there could be jealousy. There's so many different things. So education is the key to, but in the beginning, I agree with you when you say we have to initiate this in the beginning, because you can't do it a year on a job. Then it's hard.
Letting out expectations at the very beginning, right? So even if you married into it and they were already a cop before you married them, right? Being able to set new expectations of, this is what I expect, even though you are a police officer or a firefighter, this is what I expect. And then the couple have to look at it together and say, okay, is that really realistic based on all these things that come with the job that are out of our control? The tough hours, the sleep. And then also, family members, it's so hard, but to have a little bit of that cushion, a little bit of that boundary, that your first responders' spouse, your first responders' responses are theirs. They are not yours. They're not because of you. So if someone comes home and they're a little bit hijacked and they're kind of just upset, just let them do it. Let them be kind of on edge a little bit. And then if it starts to interfere, then say, hey, do you need to step out for a moment? Do you need to take a few deep breaths? Like, what's going on here? Because I'm seeing this. What do you need? And now we're back to action, solution focus, rather than first responder coming home, feeling a certain way, And the first responder family member is saying, oh, it's because, I didn't clean the house, or you don't think I'm enough, or you don't care about me, or you'd rather be at work. As soon as the family member is interpreting every single move of the first responder's hijacked nervous system as something that has to do with them, It can be a nasty spiral especially for couples.
Absolutely. I'm sorry,
I'm just plugging in my charger.
Been there, done that. But yeah, been there, done that. It's hard to. It's difficult on both sides, and I'm just glad that there is more organizations out there, more therapists like yourself who are including the family in that, because I mean, gosh, when I got on Secret Service, it was the same. Everybody that was there was divorced at least once. There was I think one guy in the field office that was married, but yeah, the same thing. And it wasn't, they don't teach you how to communicate. They teach you how to communicate for the job, not for how you're going to be with the job, having to, be at home and what it's like to work, 24 hours straight, or some crazy detail that has you up until all hours, sleeping 4 hours, and all you want to do is come home, and literally you have to go to bed because trying to have any conversation is not going to be good for anybody. Yeah.
And if I can just piggyback on what you just said, when you talk about things like communication and setting boundaries and how to be aware and how to have those healthy interactions, if we only taught those skills, all of them will get completely washed out by the hijacked nervous system. So this is why there has to be, after your shift, there has to be some form of treatment, of a skill, of an outlet, so that we are helping the limbic system, so that you can communicate effectively. You can set boundaries. You can come home and be more aware, because if we don't do the physiological stuff, that's the primary part of this. You have to learn how to regulate your nervous system, and you can do it, but it takes practice, repetitive practice, the same way that, Sam, like you said, you go to the range and you do it over and over and over again. So it's muscle memory. You have to practice these skills and how to regulate your nervous system over and over and over again to maximize that efficiency, so that you don't have to think about it so much. You can get to that place, but the body has to get conditioned in that way.
Yeah, it's building resilience. If you say, oh, this is part of my therapy, people are like, I don't want a therapy, the T word, it's like resilience. You want to be the best you. You want to be the best first responder. Of course you want to be the best first responder. Then these are the things you need to do. And that's why we need to get this into departments.
Yes.
Well, you got to be prepared. And what Dr. T just said, we have to prepare our first responders at the very beginning, because a year in, it's hard to teach them how to be resilient when they're already on that hamster wheel. To pull a first responder off the hamster wheel and say, all right, this is what you got to do. He's going to be like, no, I got to go. He's already in that, a month on a job in a busy precinct or in a busy firehouse. You're already in that hypervigilant mode.
Right.
I know medics, in EMS in New York City, my first day on a job, we ran 15 jobs, 3 homicides. I was like, holy crap. And this is, day one out of the academy.
Yeah.
So we have to catch them prior,
We have to catch them, and then it has to stay. And so I tell resiliency is not a one and done. You need to be informed at the beginning. I was just telling someone the other day, I feel like, and I tell my clients this too, I feel like it's like an unethical research study. And here's why. We basically take these brains of humans and we just give it a front row seat to like the horrors of life. And then we just see how they do. And the reason I say it's unethical, because in a research study, you have to let your participant understand all the risks if they want to voluntarily sign up for the study, right? We are doing such an injustice of only letting them know the risks that they may learn about is you can die on this job.
Yeah, welcome to the shit show.
But that makes them learn. They don't learn all the other risks of hey, this is going to change your brain at the cellular level. And this is what that's going to look like when you're home with your loved ones or home by yourself. Like that risk is not covered. So I feel like you can't have an informed decision when you're leaving out that huge chunk. So yes, informed at the academy, but then resiliency has to be throughout your entire career. That's really when we're needing it, because like you said, John, like that's when it's starting to pile. We need to get ahead of that so they're learning to ride the wave of the job. And then we have to prepare them for retirement. Because some people think, oh, I'm on the countdown. I got 2 years, 8 months, 36 hours and 2 minutes. And they think it's going to be this, just like, I'm done and I'm free. Well, what do you think's happened to a brain that you've just done this with threat and trauma to over and over? And then you stop that. And the brain's going to go, zip, and it's going to feel like anxiety. It's going to feel like depression. It's going to feel like you've lost your purpose. Like, who's here now? You have to prepare them for retirement. Mm-hmm. And so it has to be just sprinkled across the entire career to help them be who they need to be when they're out there protecting their communities.
And that's a whole nother show, man. Preparing for retirement.
I agree.
That you could dig so deep into that. You know, when you're coming up for retirement, they have all these big seminars on what pension to take, what life insurance to take, what medical insurance to take. They kind of gear you up for these different options, but they never tell you what you're going to feel like when you take that badge off, or when you hang your turn-up coat out and you don't go entering the firehouse anymore, or you're not, putting on the badge anymore. You're losing your identity. You feel like you're losing your identity, right? So,
and then again, we talk about expectations of family members. Family members are thinking, "Holy cow, we've made it! We've made it to the end." They have all these ideas of, we're going to have all this time together. We're going to have this and that, and the first responder is going to go through a transition phase. And depending on how they cope with that transition phase, that phase will either last a long time, or they'll come out of it and then life will find a new normal. But if a first responder family member is anticipating it's just going to be this like walk out and we're going to step hand in hand to our new retired life together, they're going to be disappointed.
Well, that's why they make it a joke where they say, first responders after retirement, the life expectancy is 5 years.
Right.
And they joke about it. They say, "Oh, you're going to retire, you'll be dead in 5 years." That's not a joke. That's statistically true.
Right.
But it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that. You should be able to retire and live 20 years, 25, 30 years later, enjoy your stuff.
Well, you deserve, after sacrificing so much of a good chunk of your life, you deserve to be able to reap the benefits of that and enjoy your life and have that quality waiting for you at the end of it.
But you look at the stress levels, right? And I just saw a thing with Blue Health about the stress levels that cause, your cardiac problems. They have the heart bill, they have the lung bill, okay, for firefighters, because they know that, a firefighter going into a smoky environment, after he retires, he may have some lung problems. Okay, a cop's going to have some heart problems through stress, right? But they don't tell you there's no mental health bill to turn around and say there's no brain, right? There's no brain bill, because they say before you got on the job, you were fit for duty, right? They made sure. Now you're off the job, you're not mentally right. That means the job affected your brain.
Correct.
And there's nothing later on in life to help you or help our first responders after retirement.
Right.
You're forgotten about.
Yeah, there's more and more. I mean, there's more and more retirees putting together groups, 501c3s to help with this exact thing.
And if I can just say, for the brain, because sometimes, command staff, the old guys and gals have been on forever, they think that all this resiliency talk and all this wellness is kind of for like the new crowd coming through. But it is not too late for you, because what we know about the brain is it has something called neuroplasticity, which means the brain has the capacity to change and make new associations well into your older age, right? Where some people thought, we were just given this brain that just like slowly deteriorates as you get older. But it doesn't work that way. You can change the way that your brain functions, but again, you have to be intentional with it. You are not a lost cause. You are not past this whole, phase of resiliency. There is still quality for you. There's still quality for you.
That's huge. That's huge. So let's say building resiliency. There is hope. Quality. Dr. T, first responders that are listening, how do they reach you?
So you can go to the website, which I appreciate. I saw you guys. Yep. Oh, and there's first. So the website is www.h. Yep. It's not Tweedell. It's Twedell. Hence why I go by Dr. T, but TWEDELL.org. And then I just actually made an Instagram that is for first. That's all about like behind the scenes wellness support. And that's dr.t.first, and first is spelled with the number 1. Okay.
That first is spelled with the number 1 on the Instagram.
Yeah. So Instagram is dr.t.first, but the number 1, but the I is spelled with the number 1.
Got it.
And if I can also add on one last thing, when we come back to that statement that I said about if you are someone who is still saying, if you can't handle this job, you shouldn't be in it, please stop. You're making yourself, it's not a good book. It's not helpful, right? And so instead, what we should say is if you cannot have a really good wellness approach to this job, then you're right, this job is not for you. If you cannot sustain some level of wellness, then this job is not for you. Get creative with your wellness. And like you said, it doesn't have to be therapy. Therapy is one part of skills training. It can be the best thing. We all have what we need to help ourselves. Running, okay? Moving your body. Your body craves it. That's a natural way to get the nervous system more regulated. There's a fantastic book called Spark by Dr. John Rady, and it's all about how the revolutionary impact of how we can run, how can we move our bodies to manage things like anxiety, depression, ADHD, aging. Other ones that we can include. They are. John, how's the heart?
But see, here, this is a perfect example. All right, not bothering me
because we're talking and you got headphones on.
Yeah, but I hear the dogs bark. I hear the dogs barking.
Yeah.
And see, this is weird. I hear the dogs barking. I know they're going crazy, but I'm in my studio, right? So maybe it's a safe zone. It's different when I walk into the kitchen. So it's weird how triggers work. Because I can walk in a kennel. I can go to a kennel to go adopt another dog, and all these puppies and dogs can go running at me. Wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
It's just when I walk into my home, it's weird.
And I'm going to end with, I want to make sure you guys know how to breathe, okay? Because breathing is the other thing that we can do. But before I say that, just some other local resources, other ways to have wellness. Infrared light therapy is another fantastic way. It attacks, not attacks. It helps as a catalyst at the cellular level to decrease inflammation and increase energy. So there's a spot here in North Texas called Escape Pain. It's spelled SCAPE, pain. And
spell that again.
Escape. So SCAPE, pain. And I have connected with the owner. And if you go in and you mention Dr. T and show some form of identification to show you're a first responder, they've got some really great discount codes for you. The bed looks like a tanning bed. I promise I am not sending you to get a nice glow. I'm just sending you to help the body heal. Like I said, it's infrared light. Really accentuates what the body already does to heal itself, but that process gets broken down by stress and age. Okay. Guess what
I got hanging in the office downstairs. We've had it for 3 years now.
What
the infrared.
Infrared?
Yeah, it's a home unit that actually my husband found to help with his achalasia, all of his other medical tissue healing, regeneration. Yeah, it's quite amazing.
Yeah. So check out Escape Pain. Find unique ways to add in, and then our watch, a lot of research behind the power of these courses with first responders.
Hell yeah.
OutRatchPX.org. Check us out there. Acupuncture is another great kind of holistic way. I always like to give people a lot of different options so that if you can just find little pieces to slide in one or two of these, you are contributing to your wellness that likely your department has neglected, right? The last thing I'll end you with is making sure you're breathing correctly, because breath work is the best way to control the limbic system. So when you take a nice deep breath, what I want both of you to do, hand over the belly button and one hand on your chest. Right? And this helps us really stay focused on how you're taking the oxygen in. So before I even tell you what to do, I just want you to pay attention to how you're breathing right now. And this goes for all the listeners and viewers too. Just pay attention to how your body's taking in oxygen, what you notice. And now we're going to do some more diaphragmatic breathing, because chances are, as humans, we kind of bulldoze through life. You're probably breathing from a very shallow part of your lungs, right? So when you take a nice deep breath, the bottom hand over your belly button, it should come out when you're taking an inhale. So you are expanding that diaphragm as if you're imagining filling up a balloon with oxygen. And then hold it for about a second or two, let the oxygen actually fill your lungs. Exhale is really important. Exhale slows down your heart rate. So then when you exhale, the balloon's deflating, you're pulling that belly button back towards your spine. You can do everything through your nose. That is ideal. Okay, so if sometimes what you see when people think they have to take deep breaths and they're going, and their shoulders are coming up and their stomachs are coming in when they're inhaling, and then they're exhaling and kind of dropping all out, exact opposite. Okay, shoulders really shouldn't move. You take a nice deep breath in and put numbers to it if that helps keep you distracted too, if the mind's going. So maybe we inhale for 1, 2, 3, and hold it. And exhale, 2, 3, and relax. And let's do one more. So breathe in, 2, 3, fill up that balloon and hold it. Exhale, 2, 3, and relax. You send messages to your heart to change how it's pumping. Blood pressure comes down, you're stabilizing it. What else I do? You guys talked about like a mantra earlier. Learn something with that exhale. I do it all the time for my clients. They probably think I'm nuts because I have them do it at least 3 times. And I slow it down. So if they're at a point in the trauma or the threat and they say something like, I did what I could, and I have them pair that really slowly while doing their exhale. And then I have them do it again, because I tell them, I want your brain to hear you. Remember, the brain loves associations. I want your brain to pair this nice slow exhale with, I did what I could, or it was enough for today, or I'm proud of myself, right? Because when you're pairing those things, the next time you think that about yourself, your body will naturally take that nice deep exhale. Or the next time you are taking those nice deep breaths and you're exhaling, that thought will come to mind. And again, in this moment, like, I am doing what I can for myself. Whatever your mantra is,
Right.
practice it though, or else the brain's not going to hear you. It's not going to make that association.
Well, after keeping my hand on my belly button, my mantra is, holy crap, I got to go on a diet. I feel fat.
This has been fantastic. I've been like on YouTube, like typing everything out, so everybody has the.
We've been getting wonderful response on Facebook as well.
Yeah,
good.
Awesome.
Good. I just appreciate you guys creating the space for me to be able to come on here and share some of these insights. You know, this isn't therapy. This isn't like this is one giant group therapy session. So I always want to say, even though I'm sharing some tips and some skills, if you're ever in a place where you're needing additional support, please reach out. Please, there are people out there who care. You are not alone in this career. You should not have to be alone in this career. And thank you for listening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dr. T, thank you once again. Wonderful. And keep up the great work, man. You are really healing our heroes.
Thank you.
Truly are. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. T. We'll be in touch for sure.
Yes. Hey, and then if you want to do that thing we talked about, let me know. Okay. Just give me my email.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay.
All right. Talk to you later.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Everybody stay safe on your side.
Thank you. To you guys as well, viewers. Okay.
Thank you.
Sam?
Wow. Hey, this is like workshop part 2. This was incredible.
It was. Yeah. The responses I was getting on Facebook are amazing. I'm sure you're getting the same on YouTube.
Yep.
Dr. T was amazing. She really brought so much to the table today. if you're still listening, just look at her website, visit her, check out First. She's an amazing doctor. She's an amazing friend. She will help you. She has helped me through equine therapy and just her way she talks. So
yeah, she's stern when you need it. She's caring when you need it.
Yep.
She's a perfect balance, and that's because she's lived it. And she understands you as a first responder. She understands the family dynamic. It's okay not to be okay. We just don't want you to stay there. And I've got another great resource. Look for Dr. T's information. We will put it out. We'll have our logo actually on a badge of honor. There it is. And so you can go on abadgeofhonor.com. You can click on it and it'll take you to get right in touch with her. Folks, this is a rough time of year. Please, families, be understanding. Set expectations of what you want from your first responder spouse, and first responder spouse, set expectations with your family. Talk, let them know. Just open up a little bit. Even if it's hey, had a crappy day, like she said. And on the flip side, don't try and fix. Just be a good listener and ask the most important question that you can ask anybody is, what do you need from me? John, amazing show. Yeah. Just to everybody out there.
Yeah. I want to thank Donna and Charles for throwing out some great questions. We want to be more interactive with our audience. We're now on YouTube, so please subscribe. You can catch me and Sam every Wednesday from 7 to whenever we're done, because we don't want to end a show when we don't have to, when we have a great conversation. But we want you to be more interactive. Each week we're getting better. We want to thank you for tuning in. And then remember, today is not the day to give up. Sam?
Amen. You want to support the show? Go to abadgeofhonor.com, click on Mad Radio. There's a donate button right there. Every little bit counts, and every little bit will be going to our A Badge of Honor workshops that we do specifically to heal our first responders. So we thank you. We thank you so much for that. Until next time, hey, everybody out there in uniform, both at home and abroad, we love you. We're praying for you every single day. Hang in there, because so many people have your back, and reach out if you need to. You are not alone.
That's right. Have a very Merry Christmas. We hope you can spend the time with your family and loved ones. And if not, like Dr. T said, you'll celebrate it on your day off. It's not a big deal. All right. Well, Sam, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And once again, Merry Christmas.
After working for 20 plus years as a police officer, not having backup is kind of scary. While I was trying to heal from the traumas that had put me in the position that I was in, I suddenly lost all the support of all the guys I worked with.
Just because we don't see it doesn't mean that we don't picture it in our head. I never thought that I would have to deal with that type of call, and I was not prepared.
I remember the moment I was like, okay, I was up all night. It was just trauma after trauma after trauma. You know, the novelty of the job wore off really quick.
They didn't offer any help. They said I needed to see a psychiatrist, that there was probably nothing wrong with me, that I was just being a baby about it.
I couldn't think of how to get help without ruining my job.
I know personally, on many occasions, that a police officer can go in and ask for help, and the chief will fire him.
they forced me to resign because they just could not understand how that could have affected me since I was just a dispatcher.
I just thought to myself, if I can't do this job, what can I do? What else? I put all the eggs in this basket. Who am I if I'm not a firefighter?
I have, 4 years till retirement, and I got to be okay, and I got to make it.